right, welcome back to the Shaman Stories Podcast. My guest today is Angela Clement. She's an author, certified grief coach, speaker, healer, and the creator of the online series Awaken Your Soul's Journey. She's formerly a school principal and a distant learning teacher, and through her path, she shifted to energy healing to help her young son recover from a rare disease, and now she helps others find their inner light and heal. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, so happy that I could join you today.
So before we get into the your story, because I find it interesting, you went from principal to where you're at now. Why don't you let
Mhm.
people know a little more about what you do today and like maybe who you work with, if there's someone specific, and maybe how you go about helping them.
Yeah, so now what I do is I work with people who have or who are in grief,
Hmm.
basically. Not necessarily just people who have lost a loved one, but anyone who's in that grieving process, maybe from losing a home or um, sometimes the empty nest syndrome, any kind of grief. And so I do that as a certified grief coach, and I also read angel cards and do energy healing at the same time. Um, so yeah, that's the bulk of what I do. I have support groups and I have the book, and so I'm busy connecting with people through my own podcast and others. So, yeah.
And so how did this all come about? Because as I mentioned in your bio, you're school principal, and I mentioned briefly about your young son. But did you grow up or have any of this kind of influence around your life at all when you were living your quote unquote, normal life?
No, not really. Um, it was quite a blind side when I lost my husband in 2021. He passed away from colon cancer. And so it was quite a shock. The diagnosis was quite a shock. And then he did treatment for about 10 months before he passed. So that stretch of time was just unbelievable. I mean, I think I spent most of it just not believing it. It was just, you hear about things like that happening to people, but you just never think about, or you don't want to think about that happening to you. And so, yeah, that really shook me up, um, gave me a whole new perspective on life. And yeah, so I spend my time now communicating with people about how I worked through that. And because that was what I needed.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it wasn't readily available. Um, we tend to not really talk about grief that much. And I didn't understand how a grief coach could help me when I was, when my husband was still going to be gone anyway, no matter what she said. Right. So now I realize that there's a lot that one can do. And so I like helping others through that process.
Nice. And so after your husband died, is that when your son had his rare disease, or was there like a different part of the
Actually,
timeline?
he was a baby, and that was my introduction to energy healing, was that he had something called Hirschsprung's disease, which is a bowel condition, and they did surgery for it, but he just never seemed to get better. And doctors made lots of suggestions about diet and all different kinds of things. But when he was 4 years old, I started to really panic because things weren't getting better and he was supposed to be getting ready to go to school. And we were still having all these problems. So a friend of mine suggested I take him to an energy healer.
Hmm.
And I was a little taken back by that, um, but interested and curious. My husband unwillingly went along and drove me 3.5 hours to this energy healer, all the way saying, I can't believe we're going to see a witch. I can't believe we're going to see a witch. He had no interest in this, but we soon discovered that what she was doing was helping. And my son, you would never know today that he ever had any condition. And so that got me curious about, what is this energy healing thing? How does it work? Can I do it? All of those big questions. And so I spent a lot of years not actually diving into it, but dabbling in it, reading books, practicing a little bit on people, friends and family. And it wasn't until my husband was diagnosed that I really got serious about it.
Nice. And did just out of curiosity, with your son and the healer, did she ever mention what maybe it came from? Like maybe was it like a past life thing or something that he had to work through, or was it just, kind of a Reiki thing where she just put in energy and she just let the energy do the work and not really pay attention to it?
Yeah, and that's basically what she did.
Okay.
Um, she worked through his feet. She wasn't a reflexologist, but that's how she sent the energy. And I remember him laying on the table, like squirming, wiggling, squirming. Like you could definitely tell he could feel what was happening, um, but enjoyed those
Mm.
treatments. He never refused. And she even did phone calls with us in between treatments,
Nice.
just to kind of keep that energy. And so, yeah, it wasn't anything we knew where it originated from, but certainly piqued my interest, that's for sure.
So when you started your training, which modality did you start with? Was there like something that called out to you a little bit more than others? Was it, working with her who was helping your son, or something completely different?
Actually, I worked with her for a day. I went to her, and she um, attuned me to whatever. She called it metaphysical healing.
Okay.
And it all came very natural to her. It wasn't, she did do some Reiki classes and such, but she said everything that she did just came to her. And so uh, it just came to me. I could use it, navigate it. I didn't really understand
Hmm.
where it was coming from, but I knew how it felt. And I often worked through people's feet as well. It just felt natural to me to be able to do that. And so she could kind of tell where things were needing more attention just by the reflexology in your feet, right? Wherever her hands decided to go, that was kind of where. And so I do basically the same thing. But I also took classes in Reiki. I took cranial sacral therapy. I took Touch for Health, the Wonder Method, like all kinds of stuff. So, and all of them are just, different energy modalities with the same kind of outcome. You're putting people in that space so that they can heal. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like to consider, I mean, it's all the same source energy. It's just how are we
Hmm.
approaching it, right? Are we using a rattle? Are we starting with the feet? Are we starting with the head? I don't believe
Yeah.
there's any wrong way to do it. It's just always interesting to see the different modalities and what works best for people. Because it's, like you said, you should just be that open channel and just let it go where you're directed to send it, or let it do its
Mhm.
own thing. It shouldn't necessarily be oh, for this specific disorder, we're going to only work on this specific area, because
Right.
they might have a heart condition that ties into something emotional from years ago, and you're only
Exactly.
focused on the heart, but you're missing the emotional piece. Or, same thing with like their knee pain hurts, and maybe that's tied to the heart in some strange way that you can't imagine whatsoever.
Right.
So it's always
Yeah.
best to just let it be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I've found. And I mean, I spent some time being a little frustrated by that. I wanted to be, the medical intuitive that knew what was going on, but I find that I'm most effective if I keep my head out of it and I just allow the energy to flow.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I just got a book the other day called, I think it's like Metaphysical Anatomy, but it's like a
Mhm.
thick tome, and basically any illness, ache, pain you have, you can look into this it's like a research book, and it'll say, for lower back pain, deals mostly with grief or this or that. If it's
Right. Yeah.
tinnitus, it deals with this, and it gives you a good place to start, but it's not the end all be all, and you don't want to just get super focused on that, but it can come in handy sometimes when you're like, I really don't know where to start, but
Right.
yeah, just
Yeah.
getting out of your way is always the best way.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
And so with that, before I move into the grief work, how old is your son now?
He's 33,
Oh, geez.
actually 34, just turned
Does
34.
he do any energy work now that he kind of grew up with it?
No, he doesn't. He comes every once in a while for a session. If he's got a migraine or something, he'll come see mom. But no, he doesn't. He's a big baseball sports fan, football fan, high school teacher, very busy. And he's got two children, so he's very busy in that life.
And that's fine. I'm just always curious if when someone grows up with it and it helped
Yes,
them, would they keep on using it? But again,
right.
there's no right or wrong. I mean, he might be using it without even realizing it at this point.
Exactly.
And b- with that, so you were doing that work on your son, learning energy work. Were you still a principal at that time?
I was started out as a teacher and so for about 20 years. So Curtis would have been probably 15, 16, 17 years old. I guess he would have been just out of high school when I started doing the principal work.
Okay. Well, I
Yeah.
was curious more of while you were learning the energy work, were you perhaps bringing it into the classroom to perhaps, bring the energy down, calm down the kids? I'm not a teacher. I have friends who are teachers, and from what I'm told today, like a lot of the kids are just, on their phones, they're acting up, they're not
Yes.
listening. There's really no accountability for a lot of them, at least here in the States. Even though there's policies, no cell phones in the classroom, they're still sitting there just playing games, watching movies, being loud and destructive, and teachers are having a really hard time because there's
Yes.
no accountability with either the parents or leadership in their school. So I was always curious if maybe bringing in, that Reiki energy or calming energy, would that help kind of keep the classroom a little bit calmer, maybe make the kids happier and they just don't know why or what's going on?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I purposely did that, but I think naturally that's just the way I am. And so, walking into a room, I would bring that energy. But there was something called Mind Gym that my teachers adopted. And they would use that before an exam and basically all of it is physical exercises, but it moves energy.
Mhm.
And so it's along that same pathway. And I know one teacher in particular really found that effective with her students and used it all the time.
Interesting. And they said that was
Yeah.
Mind Gym.
Mind gym. Yeah.
I'm gonna let my friends know about it because, yeah, I got a couple friends doing elementary school teaching, middle school teaching, and
Mm,
you know, some days are better than others, but they do their
yeah.
best and try to keep them engaged where they can.
Yeah. It's not an easy time to be in education. That is for sure.
Yeah, and I also would, think that stuff like energy work or mindfulness, if we brought that into the schools at a young enough age, that would help the kids be able to focus better, maybe calm some anxiety down. Maybe
Yeah.
not get rid of things like ADHD, but help them control it a little bit better. All these
Yeah.
little things, but there's just only so much time in the day. They got to
Yeah.
get, and I don't blame the teachers for this, but it's at least here in the States, it's they got to be able to answer the test at the end of the year. So it's just
Yeah.
repetitive, repetitive, repetitive going over and over. And I don't consider it real learning at this point. It's more just we just got to get the tests at good scores so that we can get funding. And I think that's a bad policy and a bad setup for our education system in general. Like, not a,
Yeah.
I don't know how to fix it, but I feel there's a better way out there.
Yeah, well, and I always think, if I had the opportunity to get it back into education, which I don't have a lot of desire to do, but if I did, I think that, starting with kids, like young kids,
Mhm.
and helping them manage their emotions, helping them, like you say, do the mindfulness techniques, maybe a little meditation, yoga, start to teach them some of those tools, there would be a lot less of what we're seeing as far as anxiety, depression, all of those things, because they do have a lot of stressors at home. You've got two parents that have to work hard to create enough food, a house over their heads, and so they're not getting that emotional attention that they would get if one parent was at home looking after them, back in the day when we
Yeah.
could actually afford to have one parent at home. I think that's a lot of the problem right now.
Yeah, I agree. And then all the stressors of social media and events going on in the
Yes.
world and everybody picking sides and not talking and parents
Yeah.
are doing that, the kids are picking up on it, they're copying that, and it's just an endless cycle of anxiety and trauma that we're just putting on our kids in all these different ways. And like we joke about it because I'm 46 and it's like I'm glad we never had social media growing up. I didn't have to worry about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
We had
Yeah.
bullies in school, but that was the end of it. Once you left school, you didn't have to deal with them anymore. But
Hmm.
nowadays, it's, they'll hit you online, they'll come at you. I mean, we have too many kids getting depressed, killing themselves in droves. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. 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 The pendulum has definitely swung all the way in that direction, and hopefully hopefully we can bring it back to some kind of peaceful place. It's just really hard to watch some of this that's going on. It really is.
Yeah, I just gotta hopefully give it time. And like I said, parents need to do their best to be involved as much as possible. I think that's and also part of a failure on the parent side is not seeing what the teacher needs, making sure their kids are doing okay, putting accountability on their kids. It's not all on the teachers, it's not all on the system,
Mhm.
it's everybody, it's the community. And
Yeah.
it's a hard thing, like you said, when both parents are working full time. Some parents, I mean, there's some families at the school where my sons go to where they're homeless. They're, living in camps and the bus comes and picks up the kid and the kid at least gets a free meal and a shower, but the parents are still sitting there trying to figure out what they're going to do for the rest of the day and how they're
Yeah.
going to make money to even eat for themselves. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of problems,
Yeah.
but we're not here to fix those today.
No.
But with grief work, like what are some of the common, I don't want to call it issues, but I guess themes when you're working with somebody with grief? I know there's like stages of grief. I'm sure that
Mhm.
comes to play as well, but do, like when you're working with someone with grief, do you sometimes like they're not realizing that they're grieving, or maybe it's just too hard for them to let go? Like, what's a normal starting point when you're working with somebody?
Yeah. Um, I'm on a lot of Facebook support groups. And the underlying theme in a lot of those groups is people who have been grieving for a really long time.
Mhm.
And the story is that once you lose someone and you're in that grief, you grieve forever. That is a lifelong sentence, I will say. um, and I think people hold on to that because they feel like there's a connection with their loved one. So if you've loved a lot, you'll grieve a lot. And they say that, grief is the price of love. There's that that goes on. And so when I first heard all of this, I was very discouraged, as you can probably imagine, because I was thinking, okay, my life's over. I'm going to be grieving for the rest of my life. This is what I'm going to be doing. And anybody who's been through loss, like a spouse or a child or, a pet, any of those kinds of major losses, you go into a really deep, dark place. The emotions are really strong. And so thinking that for the rest of your life, you're going to be in that space in any way, shape, or form is hard to hear.
Mm.
And so I did a lot of research. Being a teacher, I interviewed over 100 people
Mm.
for online summit. I created a grief summit and I interviewed experts in the field, people who were therapists, um, different kinds of people who had gone through different losses and come through on the other side transformed, and repeating over and over and over. It was always about being able to embrace those emotions and being able to really feel into those emotions rather than getting busy, getting on your phone, going shopping,
Mm.
numbing all those things. And I think that is probably the biggest thing at the beginning, is allowing those emotions and to have that grace and be really compassionate and kind to yourself as you're going through that. I think that's the biggest thing. And I tell people that grief is a season. It doesn't need to last forever. You don't need to be actively grieving, 20 years after a loss. I mean, certainly everybody has a different timeline,
Yeah.
and some of us is going to be shorter and some is going to be longer, and that's totally fine. But I don't want people thinking that, this is just the way it's going to be, the way it is. And there's a lot of people that say, I'm just waiting to die because I honestly don't want to live anymore like this. Um, I try to tell as many people as I can, it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find sometimes when I'm working with someone who's through grief, it's almost like they're afraid if they're not grieving anymore, that their love for that person is going to go away, or they're
Yeah.
dishonoring them in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's not, I don't believe that grief and love are anything, there's no connection here. Love is love and grief is grief. I believe grief is a process. It's a process that we go through whenever we lose something or whenever life changes and we have to let go of something in the past. It's a God-given process. It's a sacred process. It's what was given to us to help us through this. And what we do is we push it away because it doesn't feel good. Those emotions, those sadness, the guilt, the all of that stuff that comes up doesn't feel good. And so we just keep pushing that process away. And in the aftermath is that it just keeps coming back. It just keeps resurfacing. The emotions keep coming back over and over, sometimes even more intensely because we've pushed them down for so long, they come up like a volcano. And I experienced this myself. Um, there's some really rough times where I thought, I'm going to start crying and I'm never going to stop. You can be in some really dark places going through that. So it's worthwhile to have someone help you walk through that. Um, in fact, I think it's mandatory. A lot of people think that they can do this on their own, and maybe you can with a good, supportive friend or family member. But having a grief coach, I think, is the ultimate in helping you get through something like that.
No, it makes perfect sense. And one of my teachers used to say, when we have the emotions, we want them to come up. We want the sadness, we want the grief, we want the
Mhm.
anger, we want the laughter, the happiness. We just don't want to get stuck in them. It's like
No.
just let them come up, let them pass, and we can lose somebody, work through it, again, it doesn't mean we don't love the person we've lost. It doesn't mean we don't miss them. And there could be times where you see a photo or a text message. My father passed away a couple years ago, and I was cleaning out my email box and found an email from him. So I was like, I got
Mm,
choked up and saved it.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm not going to delete that because I want to keep it. Even though it was really mundane and it had nothing to do with anything, it
Hmm.
was still one of the last things he sent me. So I was like, I'm going to keep this.
Yeah.
But it's, working through that and not going into the slobbering mess and not getting out of my bed for 5 weeks doesn't help
Yeah.
me anymore.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like we need to be able to process and move forward.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
And it's a lot about what we think, right? In our minds about that. Yeah.
and when you start that process with somebody, what's a good, I guess, starting point with somebody? Is it really just allowing them to talk? Do you have like kind of I don't want to call it a roadmap, but you kind of know what I mean, where like you kind of know where you need to be with them to some degree?
Yeah, I do. I let them talk.
Mm.
Certainly in the beginning, just to find out kind of where they are in their journey. And then I think the biggest thing is I explain to them what I've learned about grief so that there's an understanding, because I think none of us really understand grief. Even in the dictionary, it says grief is sorrow, or grief is, in my book, I write about these definitions, and they're very different depending on the dictionary, which makes sense. Grief is different to everybody, but it's more than an emotion. It's actually a psychological process. It's a spiritual process. It's much bigger than just sadness or missing someone. And so I think once a person kind of understands that, then you can get more of a perspective on what's happening in your day-to-day life. Why is this coming up? Why is this emotion coming up now? Well, it's part of the process. It's part of what we work through, things that we learn through that emotion, um, messages that come forward that help us see things in a different light. All those things are really important, and they are part of the process.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's true. And how do you incorporate, or do you incorporate the energy work into that?
Yeah, so when I'm working with people, I'm often, well, I'm just putting them into, say, holding space.
Mhm.
So I always tell people, when you break your leg, the doctor puts a cast on it. And the doctor doesn't heal your leg, you do.
Yep.
The only thing that he's done is just made a good space for it to be able to do what it does. And I feel like what I do is very similar. It's just holding a space for you because your body and you know exactly what to do. It's just getting yourself into a space where you can allow that to happen. And um, I use a lot of intuitive guidance, angel cards, or just whatever messages come to me. I try to stay very open to those kinds of things as well.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's important because I believe in the same thing. It's like I don't like defining myself as a healer because we're not healing anybody. We're just helping remove blockages out of their system. We're just
Mhm.
helping them have that space, like you mentioned, so that their own energy, their own bodies can do the healing. And they really just need that, like the space. That's the best word I can come up with too.
Yeah.
Is they just
Yeah,
need that ability to do it. And sometimes it's moving some of the debris out of the way so that they can repave the road, if you will.
for sure. Yeah.
And with that, so, because I'm always curious about this one, have you ever seen somebody with body aches, disease, some sort of like chronic pain, and then it just kind of clears up after you've been working with them for a while and they've been processing their grief?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chinese medicine will tell you that grief lives in the lungs. And people will tell me over and over again, I can't breathe. I can't take a full breath. I feel like um, I'm just not free. And it's true. We store a lot of that in our lungs, and anger in the liver. People will tell you, there's different places where we just store our emotion. And when it gets too much, the body does tell you, this is becoming a problem now. It's something we need to deal with. And so, yeah, I think a lot of those kinds of physical things can come from an emotional overload, and just pushing those things aside. And so, and like we said at the beginning, sometimes we don't know the connection, but at least if we can move the energy, that
Hmm.
helps.
Nice. And then with that, do you find community or family having a better structure in that area helps somebody? Because you kind of touched on it a little bit, but say somebody lost all their loved ones, maybe they're an only child now, they only had their mother left, and now that person's gone. Would you where would you recommend they go? Like, should they form a community of some sort? You mentioned your Facebook groups that you're inside of as well, but how important
Mhm.
do you find community for healing?
Oh, huge. Community is huge. I know when I first started, like I said, I was on those Facebook groups, but I
Mhm.
knew that that wasn't for me because it wasn't helping me. I was actually feeling worse after. Sometimes and I mean, it depends on the group, but sometimes I would be reading everybody's story and just getting more and more upset. Um, so I created my own group. I
Okay.
created my own support group, and we meet every 10 days. It's been happening for 4 years now this fall. And I have a core group in there where we still meet. We're kind of like family now. We've been together for a while. We've all gone through things. And these people have all transformed their lives through grief. And we talk a lot about the afterlife and the spirituality and awakening and all of those things. We share resources, things that we're reading, things that we're watching, and just what's helping us, right? And so when new people come in, there's a real solid core of people who have a lot of experience um, in grief. And so they can feel very supported, and also a variety of people with a variety of different losses.
Hmm.
And so I find there are connections outside of the group of people who have um, similar journeys. And so it it's been very fulfilling for me to be able to start that group and to be able to just keep it going and supporting each other even now, even though we're, through that season. It just feels good to have that community around you.
And is that online or is that in person?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
online. Yeah, it's open to anyone. And on my website, I have the way to get the notifications about when the meetings are happening, but also the notes for the
Okay.
last 4 years. So if you go back through the notes, you'll see the resources that we've talked about, the different conversations that we've had. I just keep a kind of a running log of it all.
Nice. Yeah, because
Yeah,
I think that's important too, because some people just don't know where to start, where to go, or
yeah,
maybe they're in a really small town, there's not a lot of resources, and with the
mhm,
internet these days, it's you can find your tribe, you can find so many people
yes,
that can help you. Is it as good as in person? Probably not, but it still works. I think it's still a valid thing to do. It's sometimes you just got to work with what's available. I mean, it's the same thing with like training. I can learn almost any energy modality online. I can still
mhm,
do the work. I can still learn how to pick it up. Training in person is always nicer because you get more communication, better contact. You can read
yeah,
body languages better. But, an online forum for that is just as well too, because some people want that, because anonymity, if they're
yes.
just not comfortable right when they start.
Yes. Yeah. And I found that myself being, I tend to be a little more introverted than
Mm.
extroverted. And so it's, I was really nervous about, meeting with my grief coach, but it seemed like meeting with my grief coach online wasn't quite as, you know, difficult. I don't know what the word is, but it just felt like I was a little bit removed, right? And yeah, and it worked well. It worked really well, actually. But yes, at some point you're going to want that in-person contact, but certainly meeting people through Zoom is, especially in those groups, that's been a lifesaver for me.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's more too because you're more comfortable when you're in your own house, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing when because I do energy work on people too, and I used to let clients come in person, and where I live in the middle of nowhere in the country, it would take someone at least an hour to get to me, and then they'd have
Mm.
to drive an hour back, and I would always sit there going, I don't think you really want to do that. Oh, well, no, I really want to be in person. I'm like, okay. And they'd show
Yeah.
up, and then after one session, I'm like, so do you want to come back in person next week? They're like, no, we can do it remotely. It's like, it's you don't want to spend 2 hours in traffic because it just kind of ruins what you're working on, but you're more
Yeah.
comfortable in the house. I find it works better, remotely anyway, because you have that comfort, you're in your own space, you don't have to feel weird being in someone else's spot. You can have this communication, and if things get too intense in reality, you could always just sign off,
Right.
and get away from
Yeah.
it versus being stuck in a room with a bunch of people you may not get along with in person.
Hmm.
So it's pros
Exactly.
and cons, right? But I
Yes,
think anywhere you can start's the best approach to do it.
for sure. Yes.
And you mentioned, having conversations about the afterlife and stuff. Do you do like any ancestral work with your clients, or has that been brought up before?
Um, a little bit, but that hasn't been the focus. Mediumship has been big,
Yeah.
and I think for good reason. Often people will find comfort in having messages from their loved ones, especially when it's that evidential mediumship where you really get the evidence that that is your loved one. And so, one of the members of our group actually became a medium as he was working with us. He just all of a sudden just was able to receive messages, which is kind of cool because now he's in our group and every so often he can bring those messages when needed. Um, and I also work with a partner now. The two of us work together. He does messages from loved ones. He's a channeler, and I do the grief coaching and use the energy healing and the cards to help give more of a guidance, like a life guidance
Yeah.
and healing. Yeah.
What about something as simple as just an ancestral altar, where maybe they're not necessarily giving messages, but I mean, I do it for myself. I have a dedicated spot within the house.
Yes.
We have pictures of our loved ones that have passed. We'll light a candle for them occasionally. We'll put flowers on there occasionally. If it's
Yeah.
a birthday or a special occasion, we might put something that's special for that person that we do know. But it's just
Hmm.
kind of like a way of just always giving thanks and letting them kind of be with you still even after they've passed on.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels good to do that. I have the same thing. And I remember when my husband passed away, one of the people that was in my energy group had suggested she sits down and has a meal with her ancestors. And so I said, well, how do you do that? And she says, well, I just put a little bit of whatever I'm eating. It might be their favorite food on the altar. And then she said, I have my meal and I talk to them. And so I remember sharing a Kit Kat bar because that was one of his favorites. And so, yeah, and it just feels like the connection is closer when you do that. You can really feel into that. And lots of times I would get messages that way.
Yeah, it's an important and truly easy thing anyone can do. And I tell people they can go as elaborate as they want. They can
Yeah.
go as simple as just having a dedicated space where they light a candle once in a while and just give thanks
Mhm.
for them being with you or being a part of your life or taking care of you. You can kind of just play with it and say what feels right for you.
Yeah.
it's, hey, Dad, hope everything's going well. Everything's going great here. Or, hey, Mom, I hope you're doing good. Miss you, love you. And sometimes that's all it needs to be. Some people, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, like they'll sit down and have a full course meal with them. That's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just about that connection.
Hmm.
And then with that, I do want to talk a little bit about your book if you want to just kind of let people know what it's about and just kind of give a little bit more information on it.
Yeah. So the book is called Awakening Through Grief. And it started when I was journaling. I found journaling really helpful to me to help me sort out what was going on in my head. As soon as I started writing it on paper, it seemed to kind of make more sense. And so I did that every day while Blaine was sick and afterwards. And there was always a gratitude portion to that journaling that happened in there. And I think that was a lot of what got me through, always looking for something to be grateful for and changing that mindset. But that's how the book was born. It it was born out of those journals, and somebody had encouraged me to start doing a blog, to start putting some of those things online, and that was super scary for me. Um, I I really hesitated to do that, but I was brave. I posted a couple of things, and it really helped people. And so that kept me going. I kept writing more and more. And then somebody suggested to me, maybe you should write a book. And I thought about it and I thought, well, why would I do that? It's like there's lots of grief books out there, right? There's loads of them. But in when I was in Hay House, they were telling me that everybody tells their story differently. It
Mm,
might be a very similar message, but it's the way that you tell your story that is something that may resonate with different people. And so I thought, okay, I think I can do that. So I basically wrote an outline, and the book, I will say it wrote itself. It didn't, but it came out easily for me to put my story into chapter format and then be able to add in, of course, because I was a teacher, some kind of exercises or
mm,
things that I use to help me through my grief, resources, people that I studied with to help me through. And so it's really a teaching memoir, is what they call it. And yeah, and it was very cathartic for me to write it. um, I would say it helped me more than I could ever imagine. And doing the audio portion was even more profound for me. Reading it out loud to myself had a whole nother level of healing to it. Um, but yeah, it's on Amazon, and it was nominated for the SAS Book Awards, and so shortlisted for the best first book. So
mm.
I'm pretty proud of that.
Yes. And yeah, and making the audio book too is like most people don't do that. It's always nice to have that option. Like I know
Hmm.
sometimes it's like, I don't have time to read this, but I'll put it on in the audio book and I'll be out of my field, like brush hogging or something, just listening to an audiobook for
Right.
like 4 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of or could you give one of the exercises that are in the book that maybe perhaps somebody can do?
Yeah. Well, I always share Donna Eden Energy Medicine, because Donna has very practical tools that you can use every day to help you through all kinds of stuff, including grief. And so, one of the things that she does is the triple warmer smoothie. And it is basically just to calm your nervous system. And so, I'll just go through it. It's just you put your hands over your eyes and take in a deep breath, and then pull your fingers across to your temples and then around your ears, down your neck, because this is where your vagus nerve is. And then you grab your shoulders quite firmly and pull down, and then put your hands on your heart. And it just I can feel the energy when I do it. It just brings it down. And if you do that a few times, it really calms the nervous system. I find her exercises, uh, I used them all the time while Blaine was sick. Like whenever I was feeling anxious or just not right, or I couldn't handle something, I would just go through her daily energy routine. And so I refer to her a lot in the book,
Okay.
as well as many of the energy healers that I worked with, and just other little tips and tricks like that to help you just calm, because that's a big part of it, is calming that nervous system down.
You said Donna Eden?
Donna Eden, yeah, Eden Energy Medicine.
Interesting. I'm always looking for new tricks for helping people relax and
Oh
calm their nervous
gosh,
system down. There's so many options out there, but not they don't all work for everyone. So it's nice to have a
yes,
good toolbox for that because
yeah,
some people might get too distracted with wiping their eyes and they might feel uncomfortable versus someone's uncomfortable doing the breath work because they might feel they're doing
yes.
it wrong and vice versa. So it's always good to
Hmm.
have that toolbox. I'm just making a note of that. I'll put a link to her stuff too in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. And I guess before we start wrapping it up, one thing I like to ask is, what piece of advice, we've talked about some techniques, some starting points, but someone who's going through grief, what's a good message you would like them to know?
Um, there was a quote on Facebook when I first lost Blaine, and it was what led me to my grief coach. It was, "Some say you will grieve for a lifetime. I choose otherwise. I choose the path from hurt to hope to healing every day." And I think that that really sums it up. It really is a choice. And as hard as that is, maybe to hear, we do have a choice. We have a choice in how we step forward. We have a choice right now in this moment to choose what we're going to do next, right? And so it's really bringing ourselves into this present moment, taking a few deep breaths and deciding where we want to go from here. And that might be really being compassionate and kind to ourselves and doing some really nice things for ourselves, or it might be taking a step into something a little bit unknown or uncomfortable, but knowing that it's going to help us grow, maybe doing something creative that's going to help us move our energy. We know intuitively inside of us what to do. It's just a matter of taking the time to just sit with ourselves and to really feel into what's best for us in this moment.
And what would you say to, so, let's say you had a couple, let's say the father passed on, the kids have been able to work through their grief, but the mother hasn't.
Mm.
What can the kids do to help out the mother if she's not willing to move forward or even get help if they've asked?
Well, I always say the best thing that you can do is make sure you're looking after you first.
Mhm.
And, you know, people, everybody has their own journey. And certainly it's good to be good listeners and to let people know that we're there for them. But I always tell people you're no good to anyone unless you're okay.
Mhm.
And so you're the most important, even though that seems really selfish. It's not, because if you're not okay, if you're not doing all the things you need to do for you, you're not helping anybody else. And so I always tell people, make yourself number one and do what you need to do, make yourself okay. And actually, changing that energy in your environment helps the people around you.
Mhm.
It seems weird, but it actually is true. If you change yourself and the way that you're looking at the world, everything around you changes. So, looking after yourself, I think, is the most important thing.
Oh, I agree with that, but say they've done that, they're still taking care of themselves, but in this case we're talking about the mother. The mother hasn't moved forward. Is there something
Mm.
the kids can do to help support her in a way where she can get the help she needs, or I don't want to say force her to heal, but like
Right. Yeah.
help
Yeah.
just help figure out a way to help her move forward, or maybe it's a father help him move forward. But they've done their work. They're not giving all their energy to the parent. They're
Hmm.
at the point now where it's like, what can we do to help bring them out of that depression hole, if you will, or that grief
Yeah.
hole?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of understanding, a lot of compassion, a lot of putting your arm around them and letting them know you're there. Um, and then educating yourself, on what's out there. And we can make suggestions. We can't, we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make them drink. Like you can, you can make suggestions. And I think that you have to be okay with the fact that you're doing what you can,
Mhm.
and not to give up. We don't give up on people, but um, at the same time, just knowing that you're there, knowing that you're listening, that you care, I think goes a long ways.
Makes sense. Yeah, I just see it a lot with people, especially when
Hmm.
they get older and then their parents are even older and one of the parents passes
Yeah,
on. And I have a lot of friends who are like, oh yeah, I need to get my mom to move out here with us because she can't take care of herself, but she's not willing to do it. Or I need to get my dad to let go and move back with us, but he's not willing to do it. And the house is falling apart. He's not taking care of himself, or she's not taking care of herself. And
yeah.
it becomes that middle age issue for, the kids now where it's like, what can we do? It's like short of getting a
Mhm.
court order and forcing the parent to move, like what?
Right.
But I agree.
Yeah, and I've seen that, and I've actually worked with people. I've had a daughter phone me and say, "Can you work with my mom?" You know, and I always do that first consult, um, just to see how we'd fit together, if it would work. I always do that for free, um, and sometimes they choose to, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah,
You know, it's hard, but. Um, just giving the option, I think, is doing your part.
yeah. No, I agree. And it's a hard thing too. I work with a lot of veterans and PTSD and type trauma,
Mm,
and I'll get spouses all the time. Oh, you should talk to my husband. Here's his phone number. I'm like, well, he needs to
right.
call me.
Yeah.
I'm not cold calling some guy who knows nothing about
Yeah.
what's going on because you think I can
Yeah.
help him. I'm glad to help him, but he has to call me so I know that this is something he wants.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes it's like they'll show up and it's like, why are you even here? Oh, because my
Mhm.
spouse told me I needed to be here. Like, what do
Yeah.
you want? Because this doesn't work otherwise.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the toughest thing when you're watching a loved one go through something like that, and you feel really helpless in that space. But really, the very best thing is to look after you and to, certainly show them that you're there, show them that kindness, help them out where you can. It's really hard. I know it's tough.
Yep.
Yeah.
And with that, is there anything else you would like to say before we start wrapping it up?
Um, just that people should, if they can, check out my
Mhm.
website. I have a podcast as well where I interview people that are going through grief, or they're generally experts in grief, people who have gone through and transformed their lives through different types of loss, um, sometimes spiritual, sometimes more traditional religion. It depends on the guest, but there's probably something for everyone in
Nice.
that podcast. So check that out. And I offer things like journaling, weekly journaling sessions if people are interested in writing down some of their thoughts, or just having a space where they can do that. Um, and certainly the healing heart sessions with myself and my partner are pretty powerful as well if you're looking for something to help you move through some of the tough emotions and grief.
And I'll put the links in the show notes as well, but what's the podcast called?
It's called Awaken Your Soul's Journey. that's the main title. And then it's about embracing grief. But yeah, if you look for Angela Clement or Awaken Your Soul's Journey, you'll find it.
And the website name?
It is healingenergy.world. And everything is there. The link to the podcast and the book and all of the stuff. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was a Facebook group, but
Yes,
the
the
online
support group.
or the support group. Yeah.
Yeah. Through Zoom. Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, I'll definitely link all that in the show notes as well for people. Just
Cool.
making notes that I am going to do that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate your time coming on and thank you for being here and keep up the good work. It's important, especially these days. A lot of grief going on, and I think it's
Yes,
important that we address it and look at it and try to be healthy with it as much as possible.
absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for providing the platform for people to share their wisdom. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if something our guests shared resonated with you, connect out to them. That's what these stories are here for. And if you're looking for deeper healing or support, you can always find me at pnwshamanichealing.com. See you in the next episode.